welcome back to the Sister Show. Thank you so much for joining us here on our platform. This is a platform where we have honest conversations about issues that affect us as African descendants. We discuss marriages, health and wellness, relationship, finance, entertainment and lifestyle, business, technology, and much more on this platform. Stick around and we have really amazing conversation for you today on the Sisters Show platform. So let me say hi to all my sisters on the platform and of course Cedric. Hello guys. In today's segment, we're going to discuss something that is a really important conversation that we think that we need to have on this platform. And one of the things that we're going to discuss is what it means to be a Black person in today's society. You, the viewer that's watching us, what does it mean to be a Black person? Whether you're Black or a different race, what does it mean? That is the conversation we're going to have today. We're going to discuss Black Lives Matter. We're going to touch on that topic, and we're also going to bring to you the conversation about the difference between the African and African American cultures, and as well as the misconceptions between Africans and African American cultures, because we think that is a very important conversation to have to hopefully close that gap. We feel that it's really important to have someone in this conversation that is from here, from the United States.
Hi, Juga, and thank you for having me. I'm excited about having this conversation. So my name is Cedric Akian. I'm actually a Senior Vice President for Marketing and Sales for a $900 million organization. But as an African American in the United States, obviously I have a perspective that I think should be shared. Talk about, of course, our differences, right, as Blacks or as people of African descent, and really some of the misperceptions that we can hopefully clear up today.
Thank you so much, Cedric. And we think that it is a really important conversation to have. So we are honored that you can share this platform with us. We want to ask, what does it mean for you, Cedric, to be a Black man?
So for me, it's complicated. As they say, it's an entanglement. The complexity comes with a lot of strength for me, mental toughness. There's some pride. There's some trauma. There's also anger, but a whole lot of appreciation of the beauty of our culture. Sometimes you have to portray a different person than who you really are in order to be accepted. And so for someone that's been here all my life, right, my parents, my grandparents, generations, we've been here in this country, you still feel a sense that you're not always accepted. And that's where the complication comes in.
I am interested to hear someone of African American descent to feel the same way. Because I feel like no matter how long I've been here more than I've been in Africa, even though I was born in Africa and I migrated here years ago. And I always feel like I'm viewed as someone that does not belong. Every single time that you hear that same question, where are you from? And then you go back to Africa and you ask the same question, where are you from? So it's amazing to hear Cedric say the same thing, that he still feels like he does not belong here, even though he was born and raised here from generations to generations, and he still has exactly the same feeling that I have. So that's something very interesting to hear.
As Cedric mentioned, it's kind of like the concept that they usually say about 3 strikes and you're out. I'm in a field that's very, very male dominated, which is in technology. So I have to deal with that. And then the second part is being a woman, and then not just a woman, but a woman of color. And then also coming from Africa, I feel like I have to work twice as hard as my counterparts to get to where I need to be. But I accept that and I take that as a challenge. And that, to me, what it means to be Black in the US.
Thank you, Ole, for that insight. Also very profound. We're going to jump to Amy and see. Hopefully, Amy will take us to the lighter side because it's a deep conversation already, and we are just about a few minutes in. Amy, what does it mean to you to be a Black person?
Okay, so I don't like when people say I don't see color, because definitely there is color, and we should accept to see color. What I would say is I see myself as a human being, and everyone should see themselves as a human being. Now it's left to the person who is looking at me to see something negative in me that they're going to associate with color. Because when I see someone, all I see is a human being in front of me. But once you start naming me as, oh, you're Black and that's exactly why this is, then we have a problem, because I'm not seeing, I see your color and you see my color, but I see a human being, which is a bigger person than just what your color of your skin is. If I was sick today and I need a kidney, there's no race there, right? If I was sick and I need blood, there is no race there. I just need the blood, and I can give you the blood, and you can give me the blood. So to me, I don't really see race or the person that's looking at me and trying to stigmatize my color for something wrong. I see something wrong with that person in particular.
I think for us as Africans, growing up in Africa, it was like all of us are Black, right? So we were not faced with the concept of racism. So I think for us, it's a little bit shocking, like when we came over here to kind of learn that actually racism does exist. And I kind of relate to what Amy is saying. It's because of the concept that we actually came from Africa, where we grew up, and there was not that concept of racism. So for a lot of us, it's a little bit strange initially to put ourselves into that perspective that racism exists. And I've had like many encounters where maybe I did not know like that's actually racism initially, but looking back, I'm like, oh, okay, that's what it meant for somebody to be prejudiced or somebody to be racist.
And to that point, I never looked at myself as someone that was a different color. Like I just saw human beings, I saw souls, like that's all I saw. So, but I remember one time, this was a few years back, I went walking to a Kinko's, and there was a lot of people in the line, and this older white gentleman came to me and said, what do you think of what Paula Deen said and what's going on with her? And I was kind of taken back because I didn't expect that. And then I looked around, I was like, wait, why is he coming to me? Oh, I'm Black, that's why. Right? So for him, he probably saw my color. That's why he felt that it was okay for him to have that conversation with me. Now, when I see everything that's going on with Black people, I think about my brother, and I know he has a different experience. The day he set foot in this country, it was different for him, no matter how he was brought up or how he was raised. So I think for the women, it might be also different, in addition to what Ole was saying. The fact that we are from Africa, but then also we're women, so we're not as exposed to it as maybe a Black African guy would.
You may have other issues, right? Class, so we don't really have the racial component. But here in this country, where we struggle with that, obviously since the founding of this country, the perception of us actually matters, right? And so while yes, I agree we're human beings, and that's how we should be viewed. Unfortunately, to your point, you learn quickly that people don't always view us just as human beings.
But it's more difficult for us because we don't understand racism very well. Because sometimes, just exactly like Ole said, I have had encounters at work, and to me at that very moment, I don't see anything wrong with it. But then after, when I tell the story, everyone is like, what did you do at that very moment? And I'm like, nothing. Like, well, and as now that things are more coming out to light and you hear more stories about people and what they face every single day, then it hits you that, oh, so that was racist. So we are also a learning progress as this whole thing goes, okay? But we don't know everything around it very well. I think we are still learning.
I think this is a very important topic, and really it's just across the board. Like whether you're in medicine, in business, technology, or whatever, I feel like the idea of racism and the idea of being Black is just throughout all these different fields. And especially in medicine, I think it's very important because we are dealing with people's lives. So racism should be something that should not be a part of what we do as medicine. But surprisingly enough, it is important to actually go back in history to see how racism has actually affected medicine. So if we go back in history, I'm just gonna take a little tangent here. Building the foundation of medicine has a lot to do with using Black women and Black bodies to experiment science. And back in the day, in like 1800s or well before that, during the time of slavery, educated white men that are in medicine use Black bodies, especially Black enslaved bodies, to practice medicine to enhance their skills against their will, of course. And this is how, in their own words, they try to advance the skill of medicine. And a lot of these practices, a lot of these surgeries, a lot of these procedures are being used now in the field of medicine. And we have seen these older Black people being celebrated in today's era of medicine as being the father of gynecology or being the father of medicine. But those strong Black women that were used to pioneer these studies are never been talked about in history. In a lot of different history classes and a lot of different schools, I don't think this is a subject that we actually talked about ever. I feel like if we go through learning these things, like these histories, it's important for us to not just focus on being furious or being mad about the fact that these things have happened, but an important thing is for us to actually get informed, number one, and also get inspired by these stories, to actually try to take up roles in medicine, to be a voice to people that look like us. Just, moving forward to encourage more Black people to be part of medicine and, take up roles, take a seat at the table to make policies that actually affect our lives.
Just looking back at the syphilis era, when a lot of Black men were used to experiment. So this is something that's very important, not only for Black people, but also for all minority people, including even the poor Caucasian person that comes to the hospital. It's always important to educate yourself, be aware of what's going on with your body, and be aware of the services that are going to be provided to you as a person. So I think it's important for society as a whole to try to do something in terms of, especially healthcare, see how we can educate people about the history, why we are where we are now, why are certain people scared to seek medical help because of what happened in the past. How do we change society? You can't change without educating yourself about the history. You can't change without knowing how to go about certain things. So I think she really, really talked about a very, very important point that is very crucial to all of us. And working in the emergency department also, I've seen that almost day in and day out, that when you walk in the hospital, just the fact that who you are makes a huge difference, or your presence or how you present yourself makes a huge difference. The fact that you are Black, there is one notion that is already put on you as someone that is not knowledgeable, or someone that is not coming in there because they need help, but it's coming in there for some other reasons. So there's this stereotype that exists, and it always made me mad, and it still makes me mad that still exists within the profession. And I think it would bring more awareness if we take our time to educate people that just because someone is different doesn't mean that that person is any different from you.
How is that experience like, especially you, Dr. Mams? You look very young.
Yes, Juka, I think every single time, I have to tell patients that I'm their doctor. People have thought that I'm the janitor sometimes, or the nurse. Most of the time it's the nurse. I just recall not too long ago, I walked into the patient's room and I introduced myself, and she just looked at me and she was like, "Are you the person coming in to take me for my walk?" I'm like, "No, ma'am, I'm your doctor." And she was like, "You look 12. And I was like, "No, I'm not 12. And she was like, "Okay, let me turn my light on." She turned her light on and she was like, "You still look 12. I was like, "Okay, fine, whatever, but I'm your doctor." So it's just, it's just something that's kind of very painful sometimes, that you actually have to prove yourself every step of the way. A lot of other people don't have to go through that. And also just being a woman as well, I feel like some of my other colleagues that are not even Black also have this experience where they actually have to prove themselves that they're actually surgeons, they're actually doctors, just because they're female.
It's really important for the patients to know why we're there and what we're there for. But like Mamaram said, it's always obvious. Like you walk in a room with a housekeeper, that's a male, and they will look at the housekeeper in reference to their doctor or their provider, and then look at you as the female and reference you as the housekeeper. You should be able to have a female doctor, you should be able to have a Black doctor. But just because I'm Black doesn't mean you cannot accomplish certain things in life.
Obviously, we cannot talk about what it means to be Black and not bring up the topic Black Lives Matter. I will allow Cedric to give us his honest observation and opinion about Black Lives Matter. Cedric, what do you think about Black Lives Matter, the movement right now?
So I'm glad you mentioned the movement, right? Because I mean, that should be the focus of Black Lives Matter. I think people should get used to putting TOO or two behind Black Lives Matter, because a lot of people get confused as to what that really means. Again, we're not saying that no one else matters. We're saying Black Lives Matter also, or two. And that's really the distinction. But Black Lives Matter started as a hashtag, right? Back when George Zimmerman was acquitted for killing Trayvon Martin. And of course, it's evolved into an actual organization with different chapters, but really a global phenomenon. Now, because of the Black Lives Matter movement, people are beginning to see, wow, racism does still exist. There is police brutality. There are issues of inequality and justice. And so for me, the movement, right, and the acknowledgement that, yes, our lives matter also is extremely important.
And to that point, Cedric, I'm so glad that you brought up that, because I've witnessed and seen many conversations where people are saying all lives matter. But for me, to your point, I always say, of course, all life matters. We know that. And a lot of lives have always mattered. White lives always matter. So now we are saying Black lives should matter too, right? Side by side.
Yeah,
all lives matter.
Absolutely. Now we have to educate them that we're not dismissing your life. We're just saying, recognize that my life also matters.
Question. I definitely do believe there's a lot of improvement, because we're having the conversation and it's being mainstream conversation. It's happening in the corporate world. It's happening in the board rooms. There's a lot of companies right now that are creating roles within their company that are basically directed to ensure that we have this representation within Black people. My only concern is that hopefully it's not just lip service, and it's not just because that's trending right now, and that people are actually invested in terms of making sure that there's diversity in the corporate world, that there's diversity in the boardroom, and it's going to continue, not just a trend for right now, but definitely there's improvement. There's companies that are creating rules, making sure that minorities have a voice in terms of which areas their funds are directed to. So that's definitely a step in the right direction.
Just like Ole was saying, most of these companies have now started coming out and basically speaking about it, right? But also trying to make the initiative of let's say, for example, Sephora, which is under LVMH. They've also started saying that they're going to start having more Black brands in their stores and online also, which that has not been the case like before. So those are things that they have said and are going to do. But for me, it's like, I just don't want you to do it just because it's trending. I want you guys to actually understand why the movement is. For me, that is going to be like the focus. Are you just doing it just because it's trending, or are you doing it because it actually makes sense, or are you doing it because you actually care about, the movement and Black people and Black Lives Matter and minorities just in general, right?
Right.
But
and the crying too, like what people are really crying about and what people are really saying, right?
When it comes to the beauty industry, let's just be realistic. It's just now that you have brands catering for deeper skin complexions, and we have been crying for the longest time for brands to actually care about us, think about us when they bring these products. But we spend our money buying these products, but when they start realizing that, the Black people spend a lot of money when it comes to in the beauty industry, now they're starting to listen. I remember just maybe 2-3 years ago when Rihanna launched her line, the Fenty line, she launched 40 or 50 shades of foundation, and now surprisingly every single brand is trying to copy that same exact routine. And Rihanna, her brand is almost number one in the Sephora stores, right? But the key here is, so now they've seen that example that, listen, she was able to cater for all these people and she's making all these millions. What's next for us? But the truth stands that they see what the difference is, and when they start catering for Black people, they see that there is money there, and there is but there's still room to grow, right? You still have a lot of luxe brands who still don't cater for me and you. And sometimes I swatch a product and I'm like, are you serious? Is that the darkest shade that you can get? But I think the conversation does help. As time goes on, it gets better when we actually open up about it and not shy away from it. I don't think it should be an uncomfortable conversation. I think every single person, be it Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, we should all open up and have these conversations, because that will definitely make a difference. But companies are also beginning to realize that, listen, these people have their money, they are wealthy, and they want to spend their dollars. What should we do and what should we change?
You brought up two things, Amy, that I really think it's important. And hopefully Dr. Mams can jump into that. One is we are saying when they make the color choices or when they produce these things, how come I think the solution to that is for them to understand the skin tones, for them to understand what colors that we need, just like Rihanna, she understands it. So I feel like if we have more people making decisions in the decision-making process, right, that are hired, then these situations can be actually dealt with.
How we need to be part of the decision making in all of these companies when it comes to incorporating things that actually affect Black people. I think I've mentioned this before. In terms of the medical field, it's very important for more Black people to be engaged and get involved in the medical field, because this is, it's important. It's our life.
I think that is really the main thing. That's the biggest problem. If we have Black people, people of color, in those higher positions where the decision making is happening, they were able to stop certain things that are happening, right? I mean, I remember, I think it was last year when Gucci got canceled, right? Yeah. If they had someone who looked like me and you and understand what racism means and what's not right and what's right, then they would not have, gotten that problem, right? So I think it's important for companies to always have someone in power that looks like me and you, to be able to just help them out, to understand what's right and what's wrong. Because sometimes people do things and I genuinely believe that they probably don't know, or sometimes they know, right? But let's just give them the benefit of the doubt that they don't know, right? But if they had someone that looks like me and you, then those problems could have been avoided.
Yeah. There's another point that you brought up. I have a lot of Caucasian friends, and I feel that a lot of them, or some of them, are really, genuine and they do care. But I do kind of also feel that there's a sense of uncomfortness when these conversations happen. And I feel like they almost kind of, and I'm not speaking for all Caucasians, and it'll be important maybe next time to have someone of a different color to address this for us. But it almost feels like the uncomfortness is coming from a point for them where it's like they're guilty, or it's all of them, or we're saying you, or we are blaming you as a person. For me, at least, and it's not about it's us against you. It's about trying to find a solution and to be able to be open and to allow these conversations happen without the uncomfortness. Yeah, if we can move towards that uncomfortness, move beyond that.
Just having the conversation itself, it's something very big, and it's a big win for all of us. But it doesn't stop there, actually. When you're in medical school, when we get taught about courses in medicine, usually the focus is only on white patients. Diseases can affect different races differently, especially dermatologic diseases, like things that affect our skin, can look very different on a white skin than on a Black skin. But usually in med school, you are really just focused on how it looks like on a white patient. And, it doesn't help as much, because you go out there and you're treating Black people and you don't even know how certain diseases are being manifested in these skin colors. And I think I've recently seen that there was a medical student who's Black who actually wrote a book on how different medical conditions affect different races, and most importantly, how they affect Black people. And I think that's an important thing, what should have been done a long time ago, not only not coming from a Black person, but from the people that actually initiated medicine in the first place, because we're treating people from different races. And I think it's important for us to actually be ready to incorporate all different races in our education.
Cedric, there was one point that I want to see how you feel about that, and I don't know. I'm pretty sure you have a lot of Caucasian friends, as all of us do, right? How is this conversation when you have it with them? Usually,
I actually enjoy having the conversation. I think it's really important. That's how we learn about each other. This isn't something that's trendy for me. I've always had the conversation with people that were willing to talk about it, right? And I would encourage them to talk about it. And I've had many discussions with people that were, perhaps in the corporate position that I work with, or other Caucasian friends that would tell me, wow, Cedric, I didn't know, right? And this is where I think we're seeing things are beginning to change and people are beginning to understand. And that's the primary point that we've been saying for a long time.
I definitely agree with what Cedric said in terms of, especially in the corporate world. I've had a lot of colleagues, they feel like they've been shielded from a lot of like what's going on, and a lot of them, even though it's a very tough conversation, a lot of people are not very comfortable, but they are reaching out individually and saying, wow, I didn't really, I've heard so many stories and I'm so angry that this has been happening for such a long time and we're not aware.
And to that point, I think that's why it's so great that we're in this era, right? Where everyone has a cell phone and every cell phone has a camera. And I think that has really helped shed light on what's actually going on, what's the truth, right? Because most of the times, right, when some of these probably happened in the past and you come out and say it, how many people will actually believe you? Because Black people were just stigmatized with just probably making up stories or being extra. So no one actually believed that this was happening. So with the cell phones now, I think people are getting more aware of what's happening and what's going on. Think about it. If there was someone with no cell phone around them to film George Floyd, right? To film exactly how that happened, the process, how what went down. If there was no one out there filming that situation, would the situation have been the same way and the same impact it has? Would he be able to get the same amount of justice? Because the system is so quick to just go back to your past, okay? Did you have felony? But you still have people who will still to this day doubt that it is wrong and that, but nobody is talking about his past. His past doesn't really matter.
And I think it's important that people understand how we got here, right? So the 13th Amendment abolished slavery except for punishment for a crime. And that was their way to keep Blacks or former slaves pretty much in servitude, right? And so they created black codes. If you walked on the wrong side of the street, you'd be arrested, charged with a crime, and therefore put back into slavery, right? But that would be on your record continually. And once you're on the record as having committed a crime, whether it was legitimate or not, it pretty much kept happening throughout the rest of the day. Again, this is not an anti-police discussion or conversation, right? But I think everyone recognizes that there are some bad police officers, number one. And number two, the second and the biggest problem is that when they see something that a fellow officer does that's wrong, they don't speak up. And so all we're simply saying is, and I think that will resolve a lot of issues with the distrust between the communities, is that if you see something wrong, speak up and prosecute them. That's it, right? So we don't expect to have a perfect police force. We know there's bad apples in every single industry, but when it happens, they should be treated just like anyone else.
Different people with different background will bring a different perspective, and that will help these companies with some of the mistakes that they're making, like the mistake that Gucci made last year that Amy mentioned. So if they had somebody that looks like you or me, or any one of us on the table, that person could probably have even if it was an honest mistake, that person could have brought it up and say, this is not the right direction to go, and it would have saved them all the brand impacts that they had to deal with.
Yeah, that's a good point, Ole. And I think that to sum it up, to sum up this Black Lives conversation, for me, I think it's about equality, it's about justice, it's about what belongs to me as a person, what belongs to you as a Black person, and for them to look beyond your skin color and do what's right. And I think that, like all of you guys said, and especially Ole at the end, it's actually benefits them at the end, and it benefits all of us as a collective, as a society. if we treat people the way that they deserve to be treated, their human rights, and not look at their skin color. Because at the end of the day, if we all want a better world, if we want a just world, if we want a more peaceful world, if I think that everybody will have the equal equality that they deserve, and perhaps all of that stuff, even if it's not eradicated, it will get better. So for the long run, it's actually better for all of us as a collective. So we will move on to the next conversation, which I think it's really important to have. And that is the difference between Africans and African American cultures. I think it's a conversation that is not had often in platforms, whether it's the African platforms or African American platforms. So Cedric, what do you think is one of the big difference in the cultures between the Africans and African Americans?
To your point, there are major differences, right? Culturally, we are different. But at the end of the day, if you look at slavery in itself, right, and the trauma, the generational trauma that it still has on African Americans, right, that in itself creates a different point of view and a different perspective, in this country when dealing with other races. When you look at the way we view, Amy mentioned earlier about not understanding that something might have been a racist comment, right? But growing up in that environment, right, when you've been called the N-word as a kid by Caucasian and or you've been, handcuffed for something that was just really nonsense, right? I mean, all that shapes your perspective. And so when you grow up as an African American in this country versus when you come here, perhaps as an adult or as a late teen or whatever, your views have already been shaped by your experiences in this country.
Yeah, definitely. To add to what Cedric says, I think that's basically the fact. We did not really have like all of the experiences that our fellow African American brothers and sisters that grew up here had. We were kind of like shielded. A lot of us that came here maybe came like around like our teens, where our views, our cultures have already been shaped. And like I mentioned before, growing up in Africa, we're not really exposed to racism because everybody in Africa is pretty much almost black. Maybe there's different types of challenges that people face. There's like different levels of caste systems in Africa that you have to deal with, or it may be from a poverty perspective. But if you're from middle class or if you're from like the upper class, you could go like to the best schools. You could go to private schools in Africa and have like a really solid education. So as Africans and African Americans, there's a whole lot of misconception. I'm not really sure like how it started or what the root of that problem is. But I think each one of us as Africans, we owe it to ourselves to kind of like try to learn more about the African American cultures, just like our Caucasian neighbors, co-workers, etc., are being asked to do the same thing. I think us as Africans too have to look internally and figure out like, okay, why is like, even though we're the same people, we're the same color, we do face some of the same challenges, but I think there's no way I'm going to say that I face the same challenges as our brothers, African American.
So I think to Oye's point, like a fundamental difference is that I realized that in America, I've actually seen, I think it was probably like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I can't remember, correct me if you know, when a woman was actually jailed for trying to get her daughter to go to school in a certain neighborhood for using like the wrong zip code as her address, some sort of that nature. And that was, to me, that was just mind-blowing, right? Because where we came from, so this is where the difference comes from, right? Your zip code doesn't define what schools you are eligible to go to. You go to the schools based on where you want to go. You choose the schools that you want to go to. I can live in Houston, Texas, and choose to go to school in Richmond, Texas, right? Is my choice, and is my choice of driving. So, but I've realized that in America, they basically force you, if that's the right word to use, they basically force you to and push you where they want you to be. It's a huge difference. It was a very big shock for me coming to realize that where you live or your zip code really defines what your education
you have.
Be.
Yeah. And Amy, you're very right on that. And that's one of my biggest issues as to when you talk about racism and slavery and segregation, even though they tend to say that there's no more segregation, but that's not true. Segregation still exists. Segregation started from back in slavery. And like Amy said, To me, if you segregate a community based on wealth, okay, and most of our brothers and sisters, our Black brothers and sisters, are not as rich and don't have the economical status to pay the taxes, to pay for the schools that are well equipped. Like if you go to one part of Dallas here and to the other side of Dallas, you just look at their gyms. One gym may look like a football stadium, one stadium may be like a university standard, the gym may be even a NFL standard, and you go to the other side of town, they don't even have those same facilities, and the teachers are totally different. So, and then you expect these people to grow up to have the same standard going into college. It's not going to happen. So for us Africans, that's one of the things that I always look at myself and I say, I am so thankful and I am so ashamed sometimes looking at my brothers and sisters that are African Americans that did not have the same opportunity as I did growing up, because I bet you if they had the same opportunity growing up as I did, they probably wouldn't be stuck at the same standard of education or not having the access to further their education.
To Amy's point and Jay's point, I think the fundamental difference is the opportunity that people have, right? That despite of your zip code or the area that you live, whether you're in the village, you could have someone that actually grew up in the village with very small resources. And if they're lucky and they're able to go to school, maybe to go to a decent school, if they study really hard, they could actually have a chance at going to a really good high school, at least in the Gambia. I'm not sure how it works in other parts of Africa, which is a fundamental difference, because later on that child could actually have the dream and have the admiration to be something else. And the conversation that I had with a lot of African Americans, and maybe Cedric, you could answer this too, or speak to this, is that a lot of them grew up perhaps not having mentors or not having people to look up to, the lack of belief that they could actually become anything they want to. In Africa, at least for us in Gambia, no matter what class you come from, no matter how much poverty you're facing, you still have that belief, the self-belief that if you study really hard or if you do really good in school, you could actually end up having a very good opportunity to become something bigger and better.
Because when you live in a society where all people are segregated based on class and money, then you tend to go to the same class of school. Let's say you tend to go to the same school. But in Africa, there is no segregation even in terms of wealth. You may have a rich house next to you, so you have a chance to be like that person next door, that person that you can look up to. In America, there is a huge segregation that still exists. You live in a certain part of town, there is no one else but all of the people around you are exactly like you. Most of the time, they don't have anyone to look up to. Most of the time, there's no father figure. What held this back in the days, back in the slavery times, and I think what held people together was that family. That family is no longer there. That family has been broken. That family has been segregated, where you have the dad that's not there, because you tend to get more money to support your family when you don't have a father figure around. And that's the biggest mistake that we still have in our society.
You guys hit it on the head. We didn't even get into mass incarceration, the profiteering off incarcerating African Americans, et cetera. But Jay, you're completely right. But mentorship is I think the one thing that is missing in our community. I'm going to give an example. I was working in business with some younger, two young guys, 25, 26, and they both were just starting college, right? Brilliant minds. They were starting a business. I mean, just really, really smart individuals. They did really, really well in school. So I said, why didn't you go to college as soon as high school was over? They said, we didn't know how to. We never had anybody in our family go to college or to university. No one in our schooling told us, no one guided us into how to apply for financial aid or to get scholarships, to apply for scholarships, et cetera. And so for the next 6-7 years, they worked until they figured it out. And at 25 and 26, they were just starting college. And so in a lot of these minority communities, don't know any doctors. They don't know any lawyers or scientists. They're not in those communities. And that's the biggest gap. They don't have mentors. There's not enough of us that can mentor the millions of kids that live like this. And so they're limited oftentimes by their zip code and how far they can get in their education.
I think to me, it's it's something that I see because I have a very diverse amount of friends when it comes to zip code or race, and I see this happen all the time. And I remember having a conversation. I was asking why someone, I'm like, I don't understand why this person still is not able to get their lives together. And now having this conversation kind of enlightens me more as to, I should not take the privileges I have for granted, right? Because some of these people don't have either that father figure or that mentor, the person to look up to. They don't know a doctor, a nurse, all these things that we take for granted. We sometimes don't really think that it is necessary or it's important or it actually does make a difference, but it does actually make a huge difference. And I think us as a society, not only Africans, but African Americans and Africans and just all races in general, just need to come together and just face the facts and come out and help out, because not just like serving food to like the poor neighborhoods or helping the homeless shelters is what giving back is. It's time for us to actually give back when it comes to academia in these neighborhoods and in these societies, just like we need.
Yeah, and mentorships and stuff, especially from a young age, but we'll allow Olay, because I know this is something that she's really passionate about, especially with mentorship.
Yes, definitely. That's one of the things that, like at my work, we do a lot of outreach with in like minority schools. We go into the schools and we kind of explain to the kids like the different career paths. After like all the Black Lives Matter, etc. I took a deep reflection in terms of, okay, how can I help? So I feel like we as Africans, we would not have had that opportunity to come to this country without a lot of people sacrificing. So I feel like, yes, we do tend to think a lot about like giving back home, but we also have to think about our host country or our new country in terms of our African American brothers and sisters, like how we could actually help them. Taking some deep reflection in terms of, okay, not just at work, but maybe in my personal time too, I could kind of figure out like some kids that I can definitely mentor, because usually that's one of the things when I meet an African American kid, usually they always ask like, oh, how did you get into this field? Like, how did you know that this is what you wanted to do? Like, what did you do? Like, what did you study? So a lot of them really just wants to know. They have like probably no other connection of finding out. So that's definitely something that I'm fascinated and I want to invest my time in going to those neighborhoods and helping them, giving them advice.
So to move on into the next topic that we're going to talk about in this segment is the misconception that we generally have as Africans towards African Americans, or maybe perhaps the misconceptions from the African Americans that they have towards the Africans. For me personally, the same story that I shared earlier, and I know this is one thing that a lot of Africans, it's like, okay, we come into this country and we study hard, we work hard, and then we make something out of our life, which is great. And I feel like a lot of other race probably also see a lot of Africans in those eyes, right? You guys come here with no foundation here and you make it. But I think when I had this conversation with those gentlemen, it was a long, rough conversation, but at the end of the day, after I walk away from that conversation, I learned a lot, which is their resources, the foundation, it wasn't there. The mentorship, the people to look up to believe, that was lacking, and we had it. So that touched me and changed every misconception that I had about the African American community. I'm embarrassed to say it and to actually acknowledge, but this is the truth, this is the fact. We can have a sense of judgment towards the other community. How come? Why? And I think it's because of the lack of conversation and the lack of dialogue. So there's that bridge. So if we have this conversation, perhaps I'm sure most of you guys will also have the same empathy.
So there's so much that could be said here, and time won't allow it. And so that's why I think the conversations have to continue outside of a limited forum like this, right? I mean, there's so much that can be said. But when we talk about perceptions, right, and what's shaped in our minds, regarding Africans, and I'm in my 40s, right, and so I grew up during times in which on TV the perception of Africans wasn't positive, and it was completely opposite of what it actually is, right? Cartoons portrayed Africans in a very negative light and stereotypical light. Tarzan, or whatever these TV shows were, portrayed Africans in a negative light. And what's interesting is that even to this day, you don't really see TV commercials or advertisements touting, go visit Africa, right? So I travel quite a bit. The first time I saw those commercials when I went to Europe, and I was like, wow, they're actually encouraging people to go visit Africa, and they're showing it in a very positive light. So even when I went to China, and I recognized that, China has its own issues with Africa, but even then, to see on their TV advertisements about Africa and how beautiful Africa looked on their TVs over in China, stuff that to this day, I still don't see in the USA. And so our perceptions, we're raised to think, again, negatively of our African brothers and sisters. And in turn, that obviously has an effect on our self-worth as well. So yeah.
I think for me, I'm one person who's just open about this conversation. I would always welcome it whenever it knocks on my doors. And it's been quite a lot of times I have had friends, after they get to know me more, who get comfortable and ask me, so is it true that Africans don't like African Americans? And to me, it's always a shock. I'm just like, whoa, I don't think so. I don't think that's the, but the answer they will always give is just like, maybe it's just you, right? That feels that way. But a lot of them, this is how they feel because, and again, I believe that society, just like Cedric has said, right? Society has made them, forced them to believe that we don't want them, we don't like them, and that same society forced us to see them in that negative light too. And I think this is the time, is now for us to actually come together, okay, as Africans and African Americans, sit down, have these hard conversations, get in our minds, and let's get into your minds and see where we can actually all mesh together and just understand each other better. Because it hurts me every single time someone asks that question, and I'm like, okay, wait a minute, I have to sit here and I have to explain why, and I have to explain to you that we love you, we care about you, but I just think the time is now.
There's the concept of divide and conquer. That goes back during the ancestral days of the concept of divide and conquer. The more together we are going to become, the stronger we are going to be. So guess what? That is why Africa was divided into small, little bitty countries so we can be ruled and dominated. Like you said, it is high time that we forget about all the misconceptions that the other side brings to us, and let's realize that we are all one. We're never going to be different. People are not going to view us differently. So we need to clear our minds and realize what can we do as brothers and sisters to make ourselves better.
Yeah.
As long as we are still going to be the minority.
You see, the same way that they portray, and I see how they did that. Now that Jay is talking about it, I'm trying to think how they did it and where they did it, right? The same way that we were portrayed as Africans on TV using Tarzan and so many other cartoons, that's the same way they portray, they make African Americans portray themselves. Because when we watch African American movies, right, everything we saw was about guns, violence, right? Killing or robbing and all these things. And before you come here, you've already made and forced to believe that these are actually the facts on the ground. To this day, I have a friend who called me like last month, and he's like, I would never come to America because they kill people. And I'm like, no, that's not how it works, right? But we are forced, we as Africans, we're forced before we even came here to view you as my brother, to view you that way. And you were forced to view me also in that same way that they portray Tarzan. So that's why the divide happened. And I think this is where we need to come together and kind of see
have the conversation. Yeah, and I think you guys all bring up a really good point. And Ole, for lack of time, and this is an amazing conversation. My heart is filled with joy for the conversations that we are all having here. Hopefully we can continue this conversation again, the same topic on another show. But for now, from what everybody has mentioned and from where Amy just left off, Ole, where do we go from here? Where do we take the responsibility also as people, right? And say, the past is the past. We are not going to allow the past to define our future. And the only way to do that is to take up that responsibility and say, where do we go from here? And where do we go from here, Ole?
So I think we have to be extremely honest with ourselves. I don't know if you guys are familiar with unconscious bias, but I feel like when all of this was happening, it took me back and I kind of like reflect, okay, like since I came to the US in college through like the whole path, and I kind of think back like, okay, did I ever make it upon myself to reach out to understand the other culture, like in terms of like African Americans? And no, I did not, because as Africans, when we come here, we all kind of like, it's like tied in, yeah, on our ends. And like what Amy was saying, like there's this perception that you already have in your head that even before you get here, it's molded that says, oh, you don't want to like be associated with African Americans because it's all about crime. And then also there's this unconscious bias that you have that says that, oh, they're lazy, and you, the Africans, are like the hardworking people. So I think it's time for all of us, in order for us to move forward, that we at least having this conversation and we acknowledging it. So it's a start, but I think we all need to kind of take a step forward and say, okay, find from your friends, or try to like be intentional and reach out to our African American brothers and have those conversations. Like, the positive thing that I see is that a couple of years back, I had this fear, like African Americans going to Africa to visit. Like now, everywhere you see, there's like a whole lot of African Americans who are very, very interested in going back to Africa, in finding out like their DNAs, like which culture are they about. So I think that's a step in the right direction, but we just need to continue that conversation.
And Cedric, from what Ole just said, quickly, Amy actually brought it up too. When African Americans or even white people or whatever different race come to Africa, the way that people welcome outsiders, especially Gambia, I'm not sure about other African countries, and if you're watching, you could comment below. But I know for Gambia, for sure, growing up, we welcome and embrace other people coming into the country. You were almost treated better than the people that were from that country. So, like when you see the way that we treat African Americans when they come into Gambia, it was always warm and it was always beautiful. It's like, okay, they're from America, let's treat them right, and let's show them what Gambian culture is about. And I think that's part of the culture. But yeah, I just wanted to clear that up. So anybody that's watching that wants to visit, Gambia is a really good place to start with. Cedric.
Love it.
Cedric is already Gambia.
No, and so we talk about like outreach and trying to have the conversation. We have to put forth those images, right, of how Gambia welcomes African Americans, or how other countries in Africa, they embrace us when we come, right? And so we have to hear that and know that, because up to this point, up until just the past few years ago, all people ever talked about was going to Europe or the Caribbean, right, or Mexico. And so I think now is the time for us to really, really take a serious look at our roots, at Africa, because it's a lot different than what we grew up believing.
It's high time we sit back and look back from our history and see how we can move forward. And you cannot move forward with any kind of society if you don't know where they're coming from, if you don't know what their beliefs are and how they live in. So it's high time that our brothers and sisters take the time to research about the African culture and go back and visit and realize what was portrayed is not what is existent. So thank you all for watching. Hope to see you again next time.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm just trying to urge every single African, it doesn't matter where you come from, Gambia, South Africa, wherever you come from, I'm urging you to just have this conversation, open up, just pick one of your friends and have this conversation with them. Because if anything, the honest truth is these people gave us the opportunity that we are able to have today. They were able to they fought hard enough to give us this opportunity that we have today. So we can't be what we are if they didn't fight the fight for us. So I think it's high time, and I urge each and every one of you to at least choose one of your friends to just have the conversation, and that's where it is all going to begin, and then we can move forward together.
Like Amy said and everyone said, It's just about the conversation. It's high time. And I will urge every African American also to try to visit or make it in your plans. It may not be something that you could do right away. It will change your whole perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Ole. And my last words quickly would be, even for us as Africans that live here outside of Africa, one thing that I always experience when I go there, when I visit in different parts of Africa, is the love and the genuinity and the innocence that I see in all of these people. So I hope that we will continue to have this conversation as African descendants around the world to educate ourselves, inspire and empower each other as we plan to do here on the Sister Show. So thank you, everyone. I hope that we touched on a lot of the things that we were supposed to, and if we didn't, we will revisit this topic again and bring it back. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate you guys for watching here at the Sister Show. We love you guys. Thank you, Cedric. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Dad.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cedric, for your
All right.
time.
The Sister Show Lifestyle and Entertainment News segment is coming up next. Don't you go anywhere. Stay tuned. Our entertainment and lifestyle news events starts right now. Remember to like, comment, and share your thoughts to continue the honest conversation with us right below. Stay tuned. Hello everyone, my name is Duka Cesar. Thank you so much for joining us again here on the Sister Show platform. We're excited to have you guys on this segment of entertainment. And of course, today we have the beautiful guest, Yaya, who is also an amazing YouTuber. And we are going to have some discussion about Black is King, the amazing visual album that Beyonce just dropped that everyone is talking about. Let's have Yaya introduce herself before we go into this part of this conversation.
Hey y'all, I am Black Witch Yaya. I'm 23 from Orlando, Florida. There's a whole hurricane convulsion going on outside, so sorry if you hear thunder and lightning. But I wish I had like a nice dramatic introduction for y'all.
You're still fabulous. We love you just the
Thank
way you
you.
are. Yeah, Yaya has a YouTube channel. Of course, she has like thousands and thousands of hits on her YouTube channel, and that's how we connected. So let's jump right into this amazing conversation. So Beyonce, if any one of you guys haven't heard, I'm sure everyone has heard, Beyonce recently dropped an album, a whole visual album, and it's all is about Africa. The women and even Beyonce holding a calabash. It was so beautiful, and she just really showed the continent in a very dynamic but also a very beautiful way. We hope that you guys will get a chance to watch Black is King and to be inspired by that. But first, we want to see what Yaya thinks about Black is King. What do you feel about Yaya when you watch Black is King?
With the Black is King, shout out to Disney, because I don't ever remember Disney being that pro-Black before in my life, besides That's So Raven and Proud Family. So seeing that they're bringing this to a forefront of a mixture of different type of kids, white, Black, Hispanic, this is their first impression of Africa. So that's beautiful. You rarely ever see that. And with Beyonce, she never fails. Anything Beyonce puts her name on, it's like
She's the queen.
and just this, seeing that it took an entire year. She went to Africa. She spent the coin going to different places in Africa, really taking the time to meet different artists. And also with that video, before I even watched it, I did go back and watch the Gift documentary where she did the behind the scenes of making the album. And there you could just see like the collaboration. Going back and watching that, you'll see some of the people who played different characters in the video sitting down at the table. I'm like, oh, y'all was up to something the whole time. But just seeing like the different parts, Beyonce learning stuff, teaching her new words and lingo and style. So it's good seeing like the queen almost as a student, almost like she's tapping into a new world, learning new stuff. With the video in general, it was just so much symbolism and spiritual context in that video. It was just a visual overload, but in a good way. Like I needed it because we haven't seen.
What do you think about also the way that it actually shows Africa, the way it depicts Africa? What do you want to say about that quickly before we jump to Amy?
I feel like it's beautiful. I know there was a lot of controversy behind it, but I just feel like it's just so, like if you're going to represent me, I need fireworks, I need crowns, I need glitter, I need gold. Like she point that and just flipped it all Y'all think they're poor? Okay, give me some cattle. I need glitter. I need crowns. Everybody do this and do that. She really took the time to give like a new perspective. So I personally love it. I felt like it was beautiful. I can't wait to go. I want it to be in a video. It was just amazing.
So it makes you want to go to Africa, Amy.
Yeah, I agree with Yaya totally. I know there's a whole lot of controversy going on around the video. But I think to your point, if Beyonce came to Africa and just stole our resources and like ran away with it and did not actually give any credit to Africa, then we should complain. But I think she did it in a very beautiful way. She was able to show Africa, the culture itself, what it means to be African, and show how beautiful Africa is just beyond what we are shown here in America or what they normally show to the world as Africans. Because when you watch anything about Africa on TV here, is mainly a poor child with a fly on the face, and I promise they've always photoshopped that. I bet you, with one tear, one fly. And she was able to come out and show it in a beautiful way. And I believe that she genuinely meant well, because of recent, you see how much Beyonce is fighting. And even Jay-Z, they both have been fighting for Black power and Black excellence for so long. And just recently I realized that Beyonce has launched a new page whereby she features African, not African, but like Black in general, Black products, Black businesses to empower them, and they're not paying her a penny. So this comes to show you that this person just means well, and they really want to see and portray. I could see Beyonce, just as the topics that we were talking about, trying to connect African and African Americans just together in a beautiful way, and we applaud her. Queen, I mean, she's the queen. Come on, y'all. Like, she's
right.
The queen.
She's the queen.
She's the queen.
And I want to ask Ole. Ole, what do you think about some of the controversy though that some people are saying? I have my reservation about that, but I just want to hear what you have to say about that. Like, there were some people that actually say they don't want Africa to just look like, okay, you put like 2 white dots in your face and you become African or whatnot.
Yeah, so definitely I'm not going to discount like how people that feel a certain way around the video, in terms of like they think that she's there kind of like to steal the culture, etc. I'm not discounting that they feel that way, but I just want to kind of have them look at it in a different perspective. It's not like she's going to Africa and, as all of you guys have said, like portraying Africa in a negative light, right? So if you look at it, it's a win-win for both areas. Yaya has mentioned that she has never seen Africa being portrayed in such a positive light. So there's a lot of African-American sisters that have never been to Africa, and this is probably like their first impression of Africa. And then also from
positive impression.
Yeah, positive impression. And then also from the African perspective, they have to look at it that his Beyonce, like with a huge platform, she's showcasing some African artists. All in all, to me, I think it's a win-win. She's showing Africa in a very positive light, different from what people have always seen. And then these African artists too get time to shine. So to me, I think for people that feel like she's over there to rob or steal from Africa, she's Black. She just went back to where she came from. That's
right.
All.
Like, I just want to say quickly before Jay comes in, I'm so tired of today's new media. Like, it's good, but it also has its bad sometimes. It's like somebody does something, at least look for the good in it. But the first thing that spectators do is like to rip her apart. They look at the negative stuff about the whole thing. For me, it's like, okay, if you're saying some of the stuff like Yaya you mentioned, it's like spirituality, or it's like the devil, or whatever you want to say about the videos. If you want to see that part, maybe that's where your mind is. You see it. But what about the beauty that you could also see in it? And if you're a Christian or Muslim or whatever religion you are, you have to write to it. But that's between you and your God. So for me, live and let live. So if you can't see that part of it, that's fine. But don't mess up the whole video, or don't depict the whole video as something that's as a sin or something that's bad.
I think, Jaka, is also the economic impact that it also has in Africa. This is also a marketing point for Africa. She is literally just taking Africa and selling it. Because I noticed that even the outfit she wear, one of them was designed by a Senegalese designer. So it's all these things. She's really bringing in money to Africa and also selling Africa for free.
I always say that your first thought is your self-reflecting thought. So if your mind goes into gutter, your mind goes negative, that just shows how you naturally vibrate and operate. And even with Beyonce showing Africa in a positive light, her having a whole page on her website with Black business owners, people were in the uproar like, well, why didn't she warn them before she put them up there? I'm like, I'm sure Ivy Park sent a nice little email, hey, we're going to feature on the website. Like, people naturally just find something negative. People are saying, why is a light-skinned woman telling the story of Africa, when it's like, it's all different types of shades in Africa. Like, if she wasn't using her platform for that, people would have a problem. She's using her platform to show a positive light. People are upset. I just feel like people just have nothing else to do but just sit there and like.
Yeah, you're very right on point. I was actually thinking about exactly the same thing. You are what you see in others. You are always what you see in others. If you're negative, obviously that's all you're going to see in that video. I haven't watched it, and after this show, I'll probably go watch it, because I usually don't watch TV anyway.
The beehives are gonna come for you if you don't watch it.
Does Jay know what beehives is anyways? Dr. Jay, do you know what beehives are? Beehives.
Well, I have a lot more things to watch than TV, so I have no idea. But after this show, I'm definitely going to watch it. Like you guys said, there's an old notion about what Africa is, and who are we to decide who is African, who is not? She has the right to be an African, just like all of us are. Her ancestors are from there. She's back to get her title back. So kudos to her for doing that great video. And I think it's for the benefit of the Africans and the African Americans in general, is to connect the Africans and the African Americans back together. And we need more videos like what Beyonce is doing. Africans and African Americans need to come together and support each other and stop looking at the negative aspect of things and look at the positive.
Yeah, and as you say, going back to her roots, and even in the songs, some of the songs, there's one that she says, going back to my roots, where it's not watered down, right? And then also she does one, the song, which I really, really love. It's actually one of my favorite songs on that Black is King album. It's the Brown Skin Girls. Ole, I don't know if you've heard Brown Skin Girls, and having children, for you, what does that mean to you?
It's definitely something that helpful to have like those kind of songs, and also having kids to have something to look at that resembles them, right? I've had probably like one time my daughter came home from school and she was telling me about this story. As you guys know, my daughter is like into like all the arts. She taught herself how to speak Japanese, and she went to school and she came back and she said that there was a girl in the school that was speaking Japanese and was saying, wow, she's dark. And she came back and she told me about that story. She was like, oh, there was this Japanese girl. She didn't know that I speak Japanese. And she was saying, wow, what a dark-skinned girl. As a parent, like those are kind of like conversations that do not really ever want like to hear from your kids, but that was something that she said to me. And I did ask her like, oh, what did you say? She was like, well, it's beautiful. And so I'm glad that Beyonce made that song.
We heard her mom when we watched one of the videos that you sent me, Olej. Her mom was on an interview, and she said that how this young Black girl was crying in Africa. And when she heard about it, Beyonce's mom, Tina Knowles, she actually also, it was very heartfelt for her, because that's exactly what Beyonce wanted to do, to touch people's hearts, to change their minds the way that they see Black skin, and also Black Africa, or Africa in general.
It was nice hearing you guys say that, Black people are African. And I want to quote this man, and I hope I'm not saying his name wrong, but he did an interview with Unwind with Tasha K. I believe his name is Shaka Zulu. And he was saying that he doesn't understand why Black people first call themselves Black or call themselves African American. He was like, why would you add something onto your name when you weren't here by choice. You're African. He was like, no matter how many generations you're from, at the end of the day, you're African. Japanese people don't call themselves Japanese American. Hispanic people doesn't call themselves Hispanic American. So I was like, you know what, you're right. And I always wanted to find out like where my roots come from, because being in Orlando, I see that my family has parks and buildings and all this stuff named after them. And I'm like, dang, my ancestors was doing it. But where did we come from? Like, I always wanted to figure out, so what country, what city, what street, what neighborhood, just so I could feel more in touch with my roots. And it's like, I always hear a separation from Africans and African Americans, like, oh, you're not African, you're like an American Black person. So it's just nice hearing it from y'all that, you know what, we are African. Like, I feel like official now. Like, yeah.
Oh,
You're in this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We are all the same, I think, and that will probably bring us to the end of this segment. But if you guys are watching and you haven't seen Black is King, especially if you have children and Black children, you have to have them watch Black is King. It's a very inspirational visual album to watch. And also, I think that if you guys can agree to this, I think it all came from Lion King. And she did the voiceover for Nala, I believe. So kudos to Disney, and we hope a lot more comes out that depicts Africa in a positive way, like Wakanda did. That was so amazing, right? I think that we need to see more of that to inspire children, to inspire people to believe that there is a lot more in Africa. And all the artists that are out here, please tap into the African musicians to collaborate and show what they also have, because Brown Skin Girls, it's such a beautiful song. I literally cried the first time I heard it. Literally.
Because it wasn't in style to be dark skin. I'm like, oh, if I had this song in high school, I would have been like, child, please, brown skin girl.
Last words from every one of you guys.
Yes, I'm just so happy, and so this is the day that every Black person and every person who just believe in just humanity should just be happy just to see such a beautiful thing happen. I don't care if you're Black, I don't care if you're white. I think just as a human race, we should just be happy that we see something so beautiful come out of this. And Beyonce has done an amazing job. And I bet you there are white people who worked with Beyonce in that in creating that such an amazing thing. So I don't want it to seem as if this is just like a pro-Black thing. This is just beauty in general. Beauty has no definition, no boundaries. It's just beautiful that finally, apart from coming to America, we are seeing something so
Wakanda.
beautiful. And Wakanda. But you know, everybody just knew about coming to America like growing up, right? But apart from coming to America, it's just so beautiful that we're seeing such a beautiful side of Africa being showcased. And I cannot wait to welcome all of you beautiful people, African American, Caucasian. I don't care what your race is. I cannot wait to welcome all of you guys home. And hopefully we'll make a sister's trip to Africa. That would be great.
Hallelujah.
And yeah, you're definitely part of the sisters now. You're definitely an African, so don't even second guess yourself. That's where it all started from. So we've been here for a long time, but we still feel like we belong here, and we belong in Africa as well, because America is our America, because it was made America by the Blacks. Okay, from our ancestors. So guess what? We are entitled to America, and so are we entitled to Africa. And like Amy said, it's humanity that matters. The color of your skin does not matter. It's what's in your heart. The color of your skin, I think God created us like that way and put us in different part of the world based on what you are going to get from the sun. Like earlier I was going to say, the reason why we are Black, we have a lot of melanin, right? And guess what that melanin does to you? This is just from scientific perspective. It blocks the absorption of vitamin D, okay? If we don't have melanin in our skin and you live in Africa, you will have vitamin D toxicity. So guess what? If you come to America, you see the white people, they absorb more vitamin D than the Black people. So that's just one scientific aspect of it that I just wanted to share with you guys. So
God does everything for a reason, in essence, right?
Everything happens for a reason, and humanity needs to accept that. And it doesn't matter who you are, what you are, we are all from one human race, and that's what's important. And
the African culture is so diverse and yet so beautiful and yet so misunderstood. And I'm so happy that Beyonce made this video where she showed the African culture in a more positive light.
Yeah. What are your last words before we wrap this up?
Well, first, just thanks for having me. I hope everyone was able to learn something from this conversation, learn something from Black is King. If you didn't like it, it's okay. You just need to rewatch it again and then, let it sink in and just educate yourself, get back in touch with your roots, ask your grandmama, ask your ancestors, and just be guided. You'll get a new perspective.
Yeah, thank you so much, Yaya. And for me, my last words would really be, I think the album was beautiful. It was amazingly done, and it's so inspiring, so empowering. And anyone that watches it with a closed mind, and you don't think much good of it, just think about the lives that it could change actually later on. The kids that are going to watch this and believe that they are superheroes, believe that they could be anything that they want to be, see themselves in a light way, in an amazing way, in a beautiful way. So think about that. And also the things that it could bring to Africa, like Amy said, for people to actually want to go to Africa, like after people watch Wakanda, what happened. So please, let's not be selfish in our own little worlds. Let's open our minds a little bit and think of other sides that will change people's life, literally. So thank you, sisters. It was a great one, and we hope to see you guys later. Thank you, Yaya. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to follow us on all of our social media platforms to stay connected.